Ambassador, let me ask you first of all a broad question, which is how this widening war in the Middle East has sort of colored or changed strategy and the trajectory of that war in Ukraine. What have you been watching for, and what's worrying you at this point in time as so much attention is diverted to the Middle East?
Well, David, you're exactly right. There is a big change. One of the big changes is the pressure, the financial pressure on Russia has been reduced. The oil price has gone up, so every barrel that the Russians sell on the world market gets them more money. And that was a problem. There was big progress. There had been big progress in squeezing the Russian economy and the Russian treasury by reducing the amount of oil sold. And that has been changed. We've relaxed sanctions on Russia, allowed them to sell more. And every barrel, as I say, gets a higher price. So that's a big problem. On the other hand, David, the people in the Middle East and the nations in the Middle East are very interested in the Ukrainian experience in shooting down Iranian drones. And so we got President Zelensky there talking to the leaders, making it very clear which side Ukraine's on, and it's also very clear which side Russia is on.
There's also a report on Axios this morning that there were some tense moments between the EU foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas and Marco Rubio at that meeting, in which Kallas essentially said, you said at a forum a year ago you were going to get tough on Russia if they hampered U.S. efforts to stop the war. That hasn't happened, and Rubio reportedly shot back, basically, if you think you can do it better, we're going to step aside. Now, I did reach out to some sources who were at that meeting. They were unable to confirm this exchange, but it does seem like there are tensions there about the U.S. not pressuring Russia in the way that we have seen America pressure other strongmen in other countries, including Venezuela and Iran. Do you think there's anything Europe can do at this point to change that policy from the U.S.?
Well, yes, Christina. The Europeans are stepping up. They recognize that the American attention is diverted to Iran. And Europeans recognize the real threat that Russia poses to them. And all of the effort that had gone into squeezing Russia, putting sanctions on Russia, all of that is at least reduced at this point. And so the Europeans know they have to step up. They can do some things. They can continue what they've started, which is to put pressure on this shadow fleet, these old oil tankers that are moving the sanctioned oil around the world. And the Europeans have started to board these tankers, and that reduces the ability of the Russians to sell oil. And the Europeans are also stepping up in their support for Ukraine, and they can continue to do that.
You've brought up these sanctions that have been relaxed by the administration, and I do want to get your perspective on that. We've heard explanation after explanation from the Treasury Secretary, from Scott Bessent, as to why this is happening. I'm curious how that's ringing to you, if any of that makes sense, if there's a justification here that makes sense to you, if you can understand in any way why this is happening at this point in the war.
David, it looks like the administration is trying to find ways to put more oil on the market, so to put downward pressure on prices. They're very concerned about the very high price of oil. As I say, the high price of oil is helping the Russians, but it is also having a negative effect on the world economy. So the administration is looking for any way they can put more barrels of oil on the market. One way to do that is to allow people to buy Russian oil and to buy Venezuelan oil, and even to buy Iranian oil. So they're doing this in order to try to put downward pressure. It's obviously not helping, and it is having a bad effect, a negative effect on the pressure that we need to put on Russia to stop this war in Ukraine.
Before we let you go, I want to ask you about the status of NATO, because we heard President Trump growingly frustrated with European allies, he says, not stepping up enough to secure the Gulf. NATO allies are frustrated about Trump not stepping up to help with the war in Ukraine. What is the status of that alliance, and are you concerned that it could fall apart?
Well, Christina, NATO's gone through some difficult times before and has made it through. This time, however, it does appear that there's a serious movement toward a European pillar in NATO. So NATO would be comprised of a European pillar, that Europeans have capabilities and have their own nuclear weapons with the British and the French, have their own defense industrial base. To be a European pillar within NATO. Then the other pillar, of course, is the U.S. pillar. And in the best case, that's a stronger NATO. But you're right to point out there are tensions between the Europeans and the Americans at this point. And the question is how to move forward. One way to do that is for the Europeans to develop their own capabilities, I would say within the context of NATO, and make it a stronger alliance.